Now Undermine has some of the well-designed bosses which each have their own unique movement patterns and attacks. Now they may seem overwhelming at first, but in this guide I'll give you some general tips and a complete rundown on how to best each boss. Welcome to Indie Game Guides, and today we present to you the complete guide to all Undermine bosses. Now, I assume it's clear that this guide is very spoiler heavy, since we'll talk about every major and mini boss that you can find in the Undermine, including the final boss. Now if you want some spoiler-free tips, you can check out this video in the top right corner right about now. I personally think you should really check it out because they're a major help for dealing with the bosses. But if you only want to know about the boss you're stuck on, there will also be timestamps in the description down below, so you can check out only the part of the guide you need. Now let's continue. Let's take a look at the first mini-boss, the Rockpile Mimic. Now he has basically two attacks, a roll and a slam. The boss will transform into a ball and roll towards you, and this can only be dodged by moving to the sides or jumping in the air. Now when the Mimic touches a wall in this form, he'll cause rocks to drop from the sky, and you can see where they'll drop by looking for the shadows on the floor. Just dodge them and you'll be fine. His second attack is a slam. Now which variation you get depends on how close he is to you. Now when he's right next to you, he'll just try to hit you with his rocky fist, and if you're further away from him, he'll create a fissure which spawns rock spikes in a straight line in your direction. Now either dodge them by moving out of the way or stand behind one of the rocks he dropped earlier from the ceiling, but he shouldn't give you too much trouble. The first boss is called Selt. He's a massive centipede that feels very at home in the sand, and every one of the 6 bosses has a weak spot, and in this case it's the rear green part, basically his butt. Now hitting any other part of him doesn't do any damage. Now Selt has a steady rotation which involves 3 attacks. Now the one he'll do the most often is his growl. When he runs around the field rather slow due to his size, he'll stop 3 times and spawns 1 to 3 eggs from which larvae will spawn. Now unless you destroy the eggs before they hatch, of course, which I truly suggest you do, because the larvae have a web attack which will not only hurt you but they also root you in place, and that is something you don't want during this fight, especially looking at his next 2 attacks. His second attack is a whirl where he'll spin in circles and create fissures in all directions. Now they are comparable to what the Rockpile Mimic did earlier. You can dodge them easily by jumping or moving out of the way, but the third attack is his charge attack. Now the boss will submerge underground and throw down some eggs to spawn larvae from. Now while you're dealing with the eggs, he'll summon a circle of stones around you, and when this happens, jump out of this circle immediately because Selt will charge at this circle of stones next with sheer power. Selt's rotation always remains the same. Now he'll start with a crawl, then he will be whirling around, then he will be going to crawl again, and then his charge. After that the rotation resets. Now I find the easiest way to kill Selt is by killing his minions as quickly as possible and only damaging the boss while he's laying eggs, and focus during the other 2 attacks on not getting hit. Now Selt's attack pattern isn't that complicated, so you can easily get used to it, but on the other hand it's a great stepping stone to the next one, Mortar. Before I go any further, I just want to mention that you can always hit me up on Twitter or join our Discord channel if you have any more questions. Links to all that in the description down below. And if you want to play a role in which in the game gets a series of guides next, I often organize polls and open questions to our community page, so be sure to subscribe so you know when to cast your vote. Now let's get back to the video. The second mini-boss is called the dungeon Gargoyles. Now this is a group of 4 gargoyles that breathe fire and when low on health will turn into stone to heal. Now, during this they are invulnerable to all types of damage except for bombs. So my suggestion is just to plant some bombs next to them when they're statues, and they'll get some double damage. Now if they're still alive after that, they will be returned to their living form, so you can damage them once again like normally, but they probably won't be alive after the bombs, so just bomb them. Mortar the Charged Golem is one of the most chaotic fights at first sight because a lot seems to be going on, but he actually only has 3 attacks. But what makes him actually very unique is how you can kill him. Now Mortar has 8 blue orbs hovering around him in a circle, and they're not only serving as a weapon, but they're also actually his weak point. Each orb has its own health pool, and when it's depleted, the orb is destroyed and the boss's health bar will decrease. So you should focus on killing the orbs, and you can also try to hit his arms, but they are harder to hit. His bomb is invulnerable to your pickaxe, but bombs do double damage to it, but I found that hard to do while dodging his 3 attacks. Now his first attack is dependent on his current health. When his health is higher than 50%, Mortar moves to the side and sends his arms to slam down on top of you. Just keep moving around in a circle to dodge these attacks. In the second attack, Mortar moves to the middle of the room and sends his orbs out. Now, some of these orbs slam into the ground and emit electricity. Now, those in the water will electrify the water, and 2 orbs will fly to both sides of the arena and make an electric beam which the peasant needs to jump over. The arms are invulnerable during this pattern, so just keep fighting the orbs. When Mortar's health is below 50%, he'll expand his ring of orbs which deal contact damage and sends his arms down on top of the peasant. Now they'll slam down on the ground at a quick pace than during the first attack, and you'll have less room to run around due to the orbs, but those will return to their original position when this attack is done. Now this fight is all about mobility. Just keep moving around during his first or third attack to avoid his arms and jumping at the right time, and trying to stay out of the water during his second attack is key. Between all that, just keep hitting the orbs, don't try to focus on one specifically, hit whichever you can, and before you know it, Mortar will be dead. Our third boss is Noori, Spectre of Darkness. Now I honestly found this one to be the easiest boss out of all of them, but you need to know how this fight works. Noori has no weak spots. Now whichever part of his circular body you hit, it'll hurt him. Now at least as long as there is some light. Now in the 4 corners of the room there is a torch, and if all 4 of them are lit, he has no damage resistance. But every time one is extinguished, his damage resistance increases by 25%. Now when you start, they'll all be lit, but when he extinguishes them during his attacks, about which I'll talk about in a second, you can relit them using relics like the Salamander Tail, Fury Potion and such, but Noori's attacks can also relit them. Now he has 3 attacks. His first one, which will feel more like a face, has him floating around the room and portals will open up with a hand trying to hit you. When Noori's health is less than a third, this may become 2 portals which open up at the same time. Just constantly moving around during this is the best way to survive, and I found this also to be the ideal opportunity to constantly hit him. For his second attack, Noori will teleport to one of the sides of the arena and just shoot a wave of orbs, one after the other after the player's location. Now these orbs can be used to light up the torches, but the torch Noori lands on will always be extinguished. And when the boss's health is below 2/3, his third ability will become an option, and Noori will just extinguish all flames, teleport to the upper middle of the room, and he will just start shooting lasers, and at the same time summoning orbs that will chase the player. Now these orbs will disappear after a while and can be used to ignite any extinguished flames, and they will also give you a curse if you're hit. Now during this phase, I recommend to just stand next to one of the top 2 torches and let an orb light it, so you can move back to the 2 other attacks and keep hitting him. Now Noori has no rotation so far, I know. I fought him twice, and during the first fight he never used his second attack, but the second time I was fighting him, he wouldn't stop using it. Now I think his attacks are completely randomized, but nonetheless, as long as you keep the torches lit, he'll be down in no time. Ponzu, the Scaled Assembly, will be waiting for you at the end of the Shimmery Caverns. Now this boss is basically unique because he's a Hydra. Now for every quarter of his health bar is missing, another head will join the fight. But only one head will have a light blue crystal sticking out, and hitting that is the only way to hurt Ponzu. Now each head draws from a random attack from a move pool, and there are 4 moves in total. Now they can either spit an ice ball that explodes in circular waves and can be dodged by jumping. Another of their attacks is shooting an ice beam up and down half the room and just move to the other half to dodge it. The heads can also emit a green shockwave to hurt and push you away. And the last attack is where he headbutts the wall and summoning winged scales, toxic scales or unbreakable scales, which are bugs you probably met during your run in Shimmering Caverns. And just killing them as quickly as possible remains crucial, because with 4 heads throwing their attacks at you, you really don't need more attackers limiting your movement. Now I rarely use my swing attack during this boss. Now I prefer always to use the ranged attacks during boss fights, but with this one especially, because if you touch any of the heads it'll hurt you, and I found standing in the middle of the room to be the safest spot. With minimal movement you can move away from the bat attack, the ice balls and the bugs, which most often land in one of the halves of the room. Now relics like the Phantasmal Axe are a huge help here, because when your axe hits your target, a green secondary axe will seek out the next closest enemy and damage it. That way you're always damaging the ads and the boss. Now if you're not as lucky as I was to get that item, you just constantly need to burn down the ads, so you don't really have to worry about them and focus on the one Ponzu with the weak spot. Just keep hitting it over and over and just try to focus on burning it down as quickly as possible. At the end of the golden core, you will find Seer, a fire salamander. Now his weak spot in this case is the head, and he has about 3 moves with some special things to watch out for. Let's just start off with the attacks. Seer spits 3 meteors in the sky, 5 when reduced to half health, and will strike the player and raise waves over damaging rocks from the ground. Now the meteors can be dodged and the waves can be jumped over. Seer can also release a red cloud which follows her as she moves to protect her from all damage. Now you can remove this cloud by exploding a bomb near her head, but I found it easier to just wait for it to go away. And this third attack can be easily overcome by standing in a safe zone. Seer will spit 4 waves of 3 black orbs that bounce off the wall that disappear over time and damage the peasant on contact. Now these waves will increase to 6 when he's reduced to half health. Now I found just by standing next to his head like on the screen right now, when he does this you're actually completely safe from this attack. But the things you need to watch out for are the footprints he leaves behind as he runs around, as they will ignite the peasant on contact. And beside that, between some attacks, Seer's eyes will actually flash black and red and her immediate front will be highlighted. If you're standing in front of it, when this happens, he will shoot 5 fireballs. Now, if you know that you're gonna fight Seer, I really wouldn't pick up any galoshes shoes that let you jump and walk on oil, because when you land after a jump with those items, they will drop an oil spot, and during this fight you really want to avoid any way to get ignited. Now, Seer isn't that bad. I personally got a little bit too confident at the end of the fight and took more damage than I should have, but because I did a full run before I entered the boss's room, I had all kinds of relics to boost my damage output and potions to heal myself, and he was down in no time. When you've defeated the previous 5 major bosses and collected all their fragments, you can go to the most northern room in your base and walk through the gate. Now here resides the final boss that exists out of 2 phases. Now this boss fight incorporates a lot of the attacks you saw in the other boss fights, so let's talk about them. Now in the very first fight you'll be fighting Arcanos, who mainly has 2 attacks with some variations on them. His most used attack is shooting orbs, either by teleporting around or shooting 1 orb after you. Another variation is him teleporting to the center of the room and shooting 3 of these orbs at you. And the last variation is cloning himself, so there is 1 of them in each corner of the room. All 4 will be shooting orbs at you, and if you hit a clone it will disappear, but if you hit the original Arcanos right away, the others will disappear immediately. Arcanos, his second attack is when he will thrust his staff into the ground, creating a circle around you. Now the circle has 7 mini circles in it, which will explode after about 2 seconds. Just jump out of it, much like you had to do with Selt and his stony circle. When Arcanos has lost half of his health, we move into phase 2, where your skills will really be tested. After a cutscene, you will find yourself fighting Din, the old king, with Badcap helping you out. Now I'll explain everything that's going on first, and afterwards we'll talk about some tips. This boss, his weak spot is the gem in his chest. Now beside that, he has 3 main attacks, of which his bony hands will do 2. Either a fist will try to slam down on top of you, just jump to the side when you see it hovering above you, and this other attack will place his hand on either the left or the right side of a platform and slide to the other side, throwing whatever is in his way off the platform. Now here you need to move out of the way or either just jump at the right time. And with both his slam and slide attacks, just don't forget he has 2 hands. Now if he slams his fist down once, the other one will do the same. I found it useful to keep that little fact in the back of my head so I would know what would happen next. His third attack has him shooting 2 lasers diagonally, which will slowly move to the other side. Now just jump over one to the side of the platform, and when Dylan's health has been reduced to below half, he will also slam down his fist and summon a sentry that will shoot projectiles in an X shape. Just like with all the other bosses, I recommend killing these sentries as quickly as possible. Now to help you out with all that going on, Badcap will fight with you. Now much in the same way as the priest you met in the dungeon. She'll sparingly heal you, though I wouldn't really depend on it. And she will also teleport in friendly NPCs, which will give you random relics and potions to aid you in the fight. Now these can be major help, but I can't guarantee they're worth putting yourself up for potential damage. Now, for example, we don't really have that many options during the fight to use a potion to boost the stat, so I really wouldn't recommend always picking it up. Okay, since now you know what the fight is all about, let's talk about some tips. Now, because you start this fight without completing any floor, you'll start this fight normally without any potions, relics, bombs, or any items. But not necessarily. Before walking to the gate, you can buy bombs and potions from Dibble, And beside that, you can also ask Wayland or Baba the Alchemist to craft something new for you. When they make you something new, they also will give you the item or potion to try out, and this way you'll be a little bit more prepared for the first boss. Though I wouldn't really waste this option when your very first try, because you would probably still need to learn the patterns. Now, I haven't talked about familiars in this video, but for the last 3 bosses I was using the Firebird and I found him a major help during this fight. Now, he will ignite Arcanus, for example, just as he creates his clones, but the damage over time effect will also hurt Arcanus and destroy the other clones. Same thing with the second phase. Now, I found myself constantly focusing on dodging his attack and dealing with the adds, while the Firebird's additional damage was just a great help to me because he was constantly damaging the gem from the boss. Same thing when I managed to pick up the Undermine conduit, which summons hands to damage the boss just like Noori did during the boss fight. Their extra damage really helped out a lot while I was constantly dodging. Now, you don't really need to use a Firebird, but just be sure to use a familiar that will damage the boss. If you haven't unlocked the collector just yet who breeds familiars for you, check out my video in the top right corner right about now. When you've defeated Din, he will shoot a huge ball of slow moving golden energy, and you just must reflect this projectile by swinging your axe while having picked up Grimhild's mirror, which will be given to you by Batcat. And that's about everything you should know about all the Undermine bosses. Now, I hope you found this guide to be useful, and if you did, be sure to give the video a thumbs up so other people can find it too, and consider subscribing if you want to see more guides for your favorite indie games just like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!